Good morning again. This is Clarence Trosho from Trosho Law Office. It's been a while. I'd like to discuss with you for today's episode what could possibly happen to a good number of people, green card holders who were stuck back in their home countries. I've had several cases asking me similar questions as to what could happen, mostly about their parents who went home, went abroad with the intention of temporarily visiting their home countries and got stuck there because of COVID. Now, this pertains to everyone, whether your parents, friends, everyone you know, just to let you know what could possibly happen. Well, the general rule is that if you're a lawful permanent resident here in the United States, a green card holder, and you traveled abroad for more than 180 days, and then you come back more than that allotted time, there's a presumption that you could have abandoned your lawful permanent residency in the United States. That determination could be made at the point of entry or by an officer at the airport. Now, more so if, just like what happened lately, where a good number of people had been stuck back in their home countries, specifically India and Philippines, for example, for more than a year. Normally, there's a process for that for returning residents, but the problem is that most consulates or embassies back in these countries, at least, have been closed, and no appointments for that purpose could be made. So, what's the next option? Unfortunately, the next best option is for you to return to the United States. Otherwise, there's a larger possibility that you'll be delayed and longer abroad. Now, what will happen is at the point of entry, the officer always has that discretion to deem you to have abandoned your residency. They said that you have to roll the dice and plead your case. Now, let me backtrack a little. Sometimes the airlines may not allow you to board the planes, although under the present administration, the Customs and Border Protection under President Biden have instructed airlines to accept you, but still at the point of entry or at the airport, the officer may consider you to have abandoned your residency. The recourse for you is to try to plead your case and convince the officer that you actually have every intention of assuming your lawful permanent residency in the United States. And the only way to do that is by way of documentation, taxes, employment, utility bills, phone bills, bank statements, for example, that will, and proof of residence, obviously, to show that you were actually maintaining your lawful residence in the United States and you would have returned sooner if not for the fact that COVID happened. Now, a potential problem in addition to that is that the officer may deem you to, and erroneously even, that you could potentially be a public charge, especially if you don't have any employment history in the United States before you left. That is something that could be, you could address by the fact that you have in fact paid taxes, had sustenance or maintenance or income while you were here, or probably you're about to assume employment here in the United States. And also plus the fact that you have family members actually who could vouch for you by way of an affidavit of support, and in addition to that, assets. Now, what could happen if the officer does deem you to have abandoned your residency in the US? They could practically, the practical side is that they could ask you at the airport to come back a week after for secondary inspection, to ask you questions specifically for this purpose. And if after such interview or even the point of entry, they will deem you to have abandoned your residency, then they might refer you to the court wherein you could pursue your relief and prove your case before the immigration judge. Now, this is a lot better than going through the process wherein you have to wait at the embassy for a special petition to return as a returning immigrant, because number one, you have to wait for the appointments to be made for the consulate or embassies to open for you to have that appointment with them. And also, once you apply for that, they might deem you to have abandoned your residency or LPR status or green card holder status uh, at the end of the day. And that means that you don't have much recourse. Whereas if you show up the border, plead your case, even though the officer has some doubts and refer you to the court, at least you're already in the country and you could continue on assuming and your residency and proving that will also help your case before immigration judge. Those are the things that we have to bear in mind. Obviously, some people may have some medical conditions. They have pre-existing conditions that could prevent them from returning back to the country. It might be dangerous for them to return to the United States. There might have been some lockdown or travel restrictions, not just in the home country, but also in the stopover countries wherein they have to pass through. For example, the US now has maintained restrictions as to some European countries and even in Asia, specifically India. That by itself is of public knowledge, and that could easily be addressed at the point of entry or with the immigration officer. It's another matter altogether as to whether you lose your residency status for the purpose of pursuing your naturalization here in the US. So that's a completely different matter. In any case, just be aware of this. Obviously, you have to consider your immigration history, the way you maintain your status in the United States. As I said right from the beginning of this series, this is not legal advice. You have to consult a lawyer regarding this. And just be aware when you come back, you have this documentation that I referred to show that you actually were maintaining your residence in the US and that you have family members who could vouch for you if that should be necessary. And if you do have a lawyer, to make sure that they're aware that you're coming in at this particular time, so that family members who might be waiting for you at the airport will not be anxious that you didn't come out because you were subjected to a secondary inspection or that the officer held you up for a while. So I guess that's where we're at. Second, the latest news on DACA, just a sidebar. There's a court in Texas that held deferred action for children arrival to be unlawful. What that means is that for new applications, it could not be processed. As I mentioned earlier, I refer back to our old episode on DACA. During the Trump administration, it could be held up, it could be set aside, it could be denied outright, or it could just be deemed pending for new applications. But for those that have already been approved and are just merely renewing their application and work permit, it will not be affected by this, considering that the present administration is intending to appeal the said decision from the Texas Federal Court. That's where we're at. Lastly, there's no quarantine now in New York, but be aware that things are changing fast simply because a good number of people have not yet been vaccinated. There's a pandemic now among the unvaccinated, as you are very well aware. I'd just like to reiterate this. Please, if possible, consult a doctor, have yourself vaccinated, because presently, as I'm speaking to you now, barely 48 hours ago, my high school teacher who made an impact on my life, the trajectory of my personal life and career even, just passed away because of COVID. And as I'm talking to you now, I have 3 friends that I know personally, very close to me, whose family members are even at the hospital as I speak. So that tells you the extent of the worry and the widespread danger that we are still facing. Although I'm dressed up for summer is always signifies life, but then again, we have to be aware how life could easily be proven to be ephemeral, and for us to hold on to it, not just for ourselves, for our family members especially, if something happens to us, God forbid, and for anyone we deal with. So please have yourselves vaccinated. Even though if you're vaccinated, try to wear a mask. The mandatory requirement for mask might be reinstated even for September, this coming school year. Observe the protocol, safe distancing. We're not yet out from the woods. There's a sign at the end of the tunnel, but we have to keep on. So thank you, and please subscribe below. Trosha Law Office, 111 John Street, room 1200, New York, New York, 10038, or www.trosholawfirm.com or ctrosho@trosholawfirm.com. And have a nice day, enjoy your summer, and stay safe. Thank you.